Hello guys, my name is Sean. Welcome to Bullshit Busters today. The bullshit we're going to bust today is called the whole individualism versus collectivism bullshit. First of all, I'm 20 years old and I was born in China, and in fact I went to school there. I went to primary school there for like 4-something years, more than that. You know, it was like all communist run or anything back at the time. I think it still is. There's just one thing that I read in textbooks and stuff like that. And again, I respect people's opinions on it. People, you know, not everybody perceives it in this way, but just for the people that take textbooks for granted, here's what I have to say about the one of the things that I read that I found was bullshit. So the individualism versus bullshit debate, versus collectivism debate. When I first came to this country, after having lived there, I went back and forth. But when I was like 9 or something, I came to this country, right? And I sat down in the classroom, and one thing I noticed about people in this country is that everybody looked the same. You know, when I first came to this country, everybody had the same faces. They all had the same mannerisms that people don't really realize. You know, the etiquettes, the cultural, you know, saying thank you, saying bless you. And I had learned that burping was like actually kind of like farting in China. You know, in China, like burping is not as bad. And sneezing, you say bless you. And again, it can be traced back to like medieval times, black plague and stuff like that. But why people view, first of all, I'm going to say the obvious. I mean, like, big companies, teams, countries are made of individuals, and individuals, little people like me, you make up the team, you know. You can't have teams without individuals, and vice versa, I don't know, but anyways. The whole individualism versus collectivism debate, this concept is, I think to me, is based on, actually I believe it's based on the human tendency to look at other people, other cultures, other groups, as this group of people, this label that they don't know, rather than individuals. And it's just like a human thing. You know, when I first came to this country, I looked at everybody the same. You know, if you go to like, go to a different town, all of a sudden you're like, oh, all black people are like this, you know, like blah blah blah. Same thing with like this Eastern collectivism versus Western individualism thing. And I can name hundreds of instances where it's like the polar opposites of like what you read in textbooks. For example, lines. Here in this country, you get people who wait for lines in like supermarkets, bus stops, and stuff like that. In China, there's no lines. People like, you know, it's like everybody for yourself. You know, if anybody who's ever been to like China or like or third world country, you know, you see people don't respect like rules. They don't respect other people. You know, stuff like that. But then again, vice versa. I can name hundreds of instances where it's like, oh, well. They are like conformists, whatever, you know. But the bottom line is, in China, if you hear something in China, like you hear on the news, like, oh, so and so, like they're working on this project, and there's 100 people working on it or something, and they're like, oh wow, China's collective is robotic, like this collective that work together and stuff like that. Whereas here, you do the same thing. It's called teamwork, you know. And in fact, teamwork is a very Western concept. You know, like there's also illusion going on in the Chinese community, the Chinese immigrants coming to this country. They don't know what teamwork is, and you know, in that aspect, again, my second instance, teamwork. In this country, teamwork is emphasized in schools and stuff like that. You know, you get group projects and stuff like that. When I grew up in China in the primary school, we never had any the group projects. Everybody's on your own, you know, and the reason they have such big classes, and you know, I don't want to dig too deep in it, have so many, everybody comes out of school the same way. The reason is because the population, that's the easiest, cheapest way to train people, whereas one-on-one education, treating you as an individual, that's like not as much. And also, like, my third instance is the military history, the way that this country's waged wars. I'm not putting the positive or negative connotation or anything, but Western military has also always, from a Clausewitz, he's a German war philosopher, have always emphasized order and going battles in like a dual, orderly fashion, stuff like that, conformity. Whereas China, it's like, it's always been like viewing soldiers as individual warriors, like there's more creativity planning battles and stuff like that, so forth. So the list goes on. And what I'm trying to prove that this whole individualism versus collectivism thing is an illusion, and also brainwashing, and people think that, growing up, like any culture, any company, any, people, when you get to a certain level of authority, you try to influence people to think in your way. There's brainwashing